Good morning. It's been a week since my second part of the stitch along, and we are working on this little pumpkin pattern. So today I'm going to be stitching this part on here live. So if you're following along, you can join me here. This will be available for replay too. And if you're interested in the pattern and the design or a kit, you can find that on my site. So today we're doing the little apple basket. And so I'll show you that here. It is a very dreary day again where I live, and I was really hoping the weather would be nicer because I did not want to have to do this with artificial light on. I hate having to do this under a lamp, but I have a fairly good one, but I still always prefer the real sun. So for the pattern today, we are going to be using the brown, which is 839 of the DMC. And we're going to be using also the 3799, which is the gray. Like a steel gray was what I was going for here. And then we have our apples in 498. Good morning, everybody, if you're joining us. Well, it's morning where I am. I don't know if it's morning where you are. Tell me what the weather is like where you live. Here, it's like, 55 degrees. It's a little chilly this morning. And we've had like 5 days of overcast and rain, so these are the 4 colors we're going to be using today, and we'll get started with the brown. So, for the brown, we are just going to use 3 strands, overcast and possible rain. Yes. I'm so sick of the dreary rain. I need some sunshine. Immediately. Oh my. Okay, so I'm using 3 of the 6 strands for the brown. So I just split them in half and then I let it untwist as I pull gently, and it should come apart pretty easily. There are people that pull out each individual strand and then piece them back together, and they swear by that method, but I do not do that, and I feel like it's unnecessary personally. So I'm taking my thread gloss and swiping it through. You don't have to have thread gloss, but it helps to decrease the fraying of the threads, and it also helps to decrease knots. I think it also makes it easier to thread your needle. I know, I like the first 3 days of the, I had a comment here. She said, I don't mind the dreary weather. I'm ready for fall. Because I don't think the comments show up in the replay. So if I comment on them, I'll try to read them. But the first 3 days that we had rain, I was like, oh, it feels like fall. I'm so ready for this. And I was all about it. And then now on day 5, I'm just like, I need some sun. The other thing is I almost can't film anything, or I can't film content, and I can't get good photos when it's overcast like this for days. So I need a sunny day because I got stuff to film and take pictures of. So we are going to start here at the beginning of the line, and I'm using my 3 strands. I have it knotted in the back. So I'm going to come up at the edge here, and I'm going to do the regular type of chain stitch here. So going across here, I'm doing a regular chain stitch. I'll come in a little bit closer. Last week, I adjusted my light and dumped my whole Yeti cup of coffee on the floor. So I'll try not to do that again. Okay, so if you're doing a regular chain stitch, you come up and then you insert your needle back down as close as you can to where you came up. I went into my knot accidentally in the back, so sometimes you have to pull it if you get stuck in your knot. And I'm going to go forward a little bit, just a little stitch here, and go through my loop, and then pull that. Now this time, you're going to insert your needle right inside that loop you just made, right where you came up. We're going to go forward a little bit, leaving a loop, loop it over your needle, pull it, insert it again into the previous hole, forward a little bit, loop it, and pull it through. Now, this is just one way to do the chain stitch. There are a couple of ways to do this. See if I can get it, oh, there we go, a little brighter. Insert your needle back into that last loop, leaving a loop. You always want to make sure when you're doing the chain stitch that this loop doesn't get twisted. Go forward a little bit, up through your loop. Sorry, hit the light. And we're going to continue across like this. So this is the regular way to do the chain stitch, and I'll show you the reverse chain stitch when we go back the other direction. Actually, well, I might do this whole thing, the whole top with the same. So I did a poll the other day on my stories to see who liked pumpkin things and who likes apple things. I am not a pumpkin spice person, but I like all the apple flavored things in the fall. Okay, so there's our first row. And, oh boy, okay. Another thing is this dark color is not as ideal to see. Okay, so now we're going to start from the right side, and if you can tell, all of our chain stitches kind of V towards the left. And now we're going to swap it, and we're going to come down a little bit. And now we're going to have all our V shapes of the chain stitch going in the opposite direction. And it just gives it more texture. It's kind of a neat effect. What I was going for here was like maybe sort of a wood grain. So the other thing about my thread gloss, and I'm just noticing this because, you know, you can't smell through Instagram, but my thread gloss is also lightly scented with like just essential oils. I didn't use anything artificial. I use lavender in a few of them, some lemon and citrus. I think the one I'm using right now is my citrus blend. And the nice thing is while you're stitching then, it also has this like lovely, pleasant smell if you have used the thread wax. It just has this soft, calm, soothing scent as you go, which I really like. It makes the embroidery a multi-sensory experience. And then when we get to the end of the line, you're gonna insert your needle on the outside of the loop that time. So now we've gone 2 different directions. We have all of them pointed to the left on the top row, and then this row all pointed to the right. Now, one thing I'll show you when we get to the end, we're going to go back. So here we're starting at the left again. You can do a regular chain stitch or the reverse chain stitch, which I have a tutorial on. More extensively on YouTube, if you check there as well. But if we go across, I'll show you one thing I do. If I feel like I have any gaps, you can go back with your thread later and just do like a single stitch to kind of fill in where you feel like you have gaps. I'll have to see on my previous one. So here, I'm just, I'm going to have 3 rows on the top this time. On my previous one and on my pattern, I was trying to see. It looks like I squeezed 4 in before. If you can squeeze 4 in, that's fine. Or if you don't want to do as much long and short in the middle here and you want to do more chain stitch, you can do 4 rows and then have less long and short. But here we are. So yesterday I went to the grocery store, and I have one child who likes to eat an apple every day. It's like the first thing they do when they wake up, which that's great. But I went to the grocery store yesterday and I needed to get some apples, and I was in the apple aisle, and this, I don't know what it was, if I just looked really intense about it, but this lady in the apple aisle, she looked at me and she was like, "Do you know things about apples?" Okay, I'm going to pause real quick and show you. If you feel like you have any gaps, which you can see a little white there, if that bothers you, because this is supposed to be a bucket, you can do your rows closer together, or you can just do, like I'm literally just doing one single straight stitch just to fill in a little bit of the gap. And I want to show you this just in case you have this problem, okay? My last 2 rows are a little bit further together, or further apart rather. And that's okay. It's okay, especially on something like this. If it's a little gapped, you can always go back, put in like a little back stitch. That's what I did there. Let's go over to this little spot over here and do another little back stitch just to fill in the gaps. And it's just, the only thing that's going to do is to take away the white space, and it's going to give you more texture look to your bucket. So it's a win-win. I'm going to do a little spot right here. All right, so there's the top of our basket. Looking nice. And I need to change thread, so I'm going to flip this over. So anyway, there I am in the apple aisle at the grocery store, and this lady says, "Do you know anything about apples?" And I was like, "A bit." Now, I feel like I know a fair amount of apples because I've had a couple family members work at orchards. My family has a lot of discussions about apples and different varieties. We have strong opinions about apples. And so I said, "A bit." And she said, "Okay." And so I said, "What are you wondering?" And she asked me her questions, and it gave me a chance to talk about apples for a couple minutes in the grocery store with a stranger yesterday, and I enjoyed it because I have a lot of strong opinions on apples. If you're watching, I'm not completely naive. If there are people watching in other parts of the world, I mean, maybe there aren't apples everywhere. I don't know that. But if you have a favorite variety of apple, tell me. I'm very curious as we're on this apple theme here. She was wanting to know, I guess, she was like, "I heard Granny Smith is really good for baking," and she was like, "Are Fuji good for that also?" But I have two favorite varieties. I was at Aldi's, and I have two favorite varieties, which they have one called Envy apples, which are to die for. Literally the best apple I've ever had in my life. They're really big, super firm, so sweet. I like them more than even Honeycrisp. Oh my gosh. But then I saw the sticker on them yesterday. Apparently the Envy apples come from New Zealand. So that kind of surprised me. I'm going to try a different setting on this light. See if it's better or worse. Oh boy. Maybe this. I just feel like I can't get great light today. Okay, back to the original. Oh my gosh, why does it feel so dim? I got lost. Erin from High Crafting is in here. And this is the one I started with, and now it seems so dark. Oh my gosh. Erin is like the queen of going live on TikTok at High Crafting. How about this one right here? This isn't too yellow, right? Yeah, when I started out, the warm yellower one didn't seem that yellow, but anyway, now it does. I'm using my canvas light, by the way, my canvas stand. So, it's one of the fanciest out there, I think. But thanks, Erin. I feel like this is backwards. You're usually the one going live. Okay, and I was on the topic of apples. My other favorite apple at Aldi's that I've been able to get is Sweet Tango. Oh my gosh, they are so good. Sweet Tango. Okay, so I did this in the regular chain stitch for the bottom. I'm just going to quickly go through and do a couple rows with the reverse chain stitch. So the reverse chain stitch, they're going to look the same in the end. We're just going to make a teeny, teeny, tiny little stitch here. I know. Have you used another light that you like, Erin? I feel like it is not as good as I would like it to be. And we're going on day 5 of it being like rainy here. So make a tiny stitch in the beginning, go forward a little bit, come up with your needle through the fabric, and then you're gonna loop it under that tiny one we made. After so many rainy days, I just feel like I cannot get good lighting anywhere for anything. So no videos, no pictures. Okay, so we've gone under that first stitch, and then we're going to go back down next to where we came up. And it's making that little loop, the loop of the chain stitch. Now we're going to go forward a little bit, come up, and now we're going to go under. We're going to slide under our loop. I thought for sure, Erin, you would have gotten part of that like not seasonal depression, tropical depression that came through. That's what we got this past week. Now, some people really like to do this method for the chain stitch. It's essentially backwards from what the regular chain stitch is like. That's why it's called reverse chain stitch. I'm in Maryland, and we're fairly close to the shore. So that over the weekend, that Ophelia tropical depression came through, and it was so much rain. It was like a hurricane. Now, if anyone has tried both of these stitches, either the chain stitch or the reverse chain stitch, which one do you prefer? For me, it kind of depends on what I'm working on. I think for this, I actually like the regular one. But I think, yeah, we're supposed to have like overcast days for a few more days and then more rain. So I don't know what's going on. Usually rain doesn't just linger here. Usually it blows through and then we're back to nice sunny weather. At this point, I'm just desperate for sun. I am desperate. Okay, now I'm going to do one more row of this and then we're going to move on here. My first tiny little stitch. Go forward through the loop. And then back down at the bottom. If it was sunny out today, oh my gosh, you would be able to see a lot more detail, I think, with this brown. But I didn't want to put this off another week. And as you can see, I didn't even finish my pumpkins from last week. I've had too many other projects going on. Erin is always going live on TikTok and does all these great lives. And my main complaint about TikTok Live is that you can't save it. You can't just save the recording and upload it. I mean, maybe you can download it to your device, but I don't really want to do that. So that's why I'm doing this here. And in a minute, we're going to switch. And get on with this. You can finish out the chain stitch on your own. You're just going to keep following your rows. Sorry, I'm going to give somebody motion sickness here when I hit the camera accidentally. You're just going to follow your rows, and like I showed you before, you can always go back, or if you feel like you have a wonky corner or something like that, you can go back with just a single stitch or a back stitch and just fix it. Okay? Just fill in any gaps. Like I can see right here, I have a little gap at the edge. So I'm just gonna go, I have a knot back there, so that's why it's giving me, well, I can't seem to come up where I want to. There we go. A little stitch there, and I'm gonna go down here and do another one. Just so we don't have this little gap, this little white gap here. Just one little stitch, and then that fills it in. So you can go through and do the rest of that with chain stitch, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do in the middle. I don't think anybody wants to be on here long enough to see me do the whole thing. So if you watch this in replay, then you can skip ahead depending on which chain stitch you want to see. I feel like every time I come back, my light is more dim. What is happening? Oh, the struggles. There we go. It's plugged in, so it's not like it's a battery. Okay, we got one little click there. All right. Now I'm going to take the 3799. Sorry, I'm like dyslexic here. And we're also going to take 3 strands of that. If I can get these separated. And thread my needle here. A knot in the back. All right. So just like we did the pumpkin stem, we're going to be doing a long and short again for this. So I'm going to start it. And I may not do the whole thing just because you're not going to see a lot of detail with my charcoal gray today. Just because of the lack of outside lighting and such. I was like, so you're gonna make stitches across. Oh my goodness, my dog is going crazy outside. And if you hear footsteps, now my husband's going to get the dog who's going crazy. Oh my gosh. He's like barking his head off at something. Somebody walking with another dog, probably. Okay, so I went across the whole way with the charcoal, and now I'm going to come up. I'm going to do a shorter stitch than my last one. With this gray. And then I'm kind of coming up in the middle of the stitch above it. And this is not an exact, these are not exact stitches. You can literally just fill this in, doing long, short, long, short. Okay? So I'm just going to alternate. I'm doing a short stitch and then a long one. Short and long, you want to vary them. They should not be all the same length. They shouldn't even be consistent. And my goal with this one was to make it look like one of those wooden buckets with like this steel strip around the middle. Steel or iron, I'm not sure. And we just fill in this. Essentially, I have like, I think roughly 4 rows of stitches here. Okay. I'm going to stop there because I think this is probably going to be hard to see. We're going to switch to the apples. So let me take this out. Here is, kind of see the long and short there, like the chain stitch, and then we're going to flip it over. I'm going to do my knot in the back and just clip this off for now so I can start the apple for you. Now my furry assistant is in my office. Okay, the apples are... Now, I mentioned the other day on one of my TikToks that I hate the color red. I just personally don't like red. But so I never wear it, and nothing in my house is red. Literally nothing, unless it belongs to my kids. But I like this red. It's like kind of a deeper red. It's a 498, and we're going to use, let me just double check. We're going to go with 2 strands on this, only 2, okay? And part of that is because when you use more strands, sorry, I feel like my camera has to be so close to get the lighting right this morning, and so then I keep bumping it. So sorry for the wild ride. Okay, we're going to use 2 strands because we don't want our lines to be super evident. When you use more strands of thread, you get chunkier stitches, and it just looks more, I don't know. You can see the definition more of the threads, and that's not what I'm going for here. So I'm going to pick a spot to start, and this is going to be kind of like a satin stitch. It's almost like a cross between satin stitch and long and short. But I'm going to keep my stitches as close together as possible. And I started with this stitch to kind of angle which direction I want to go. So with this apple, I want all of my stitches to go. This is like my guideline. I want them to all be fairly similar to this. And let me know if you have any questions as we go along. You can't see the comments in the replay, so I'll read them out loud, and it might be helpful to somebody who watches later. So when you use less, I guess it depends on how much. Like if you're blending, you can see the outlines of individual threads. But in this case, when we're using one color, we want it to be really even looking and solid looking and shiny. And so that's why we're using only 2 here. So you're just gonna color that in, stay within your lines. We can get one more tiny stitch here on the line. And then over here, you're just going to keep them super, super tight together. And you also want to make sure that when you bring your needle down at the bottom, you kind of almost tuck it under these chain stitch ones so that there's not a gap. So it looks like the apple is tucked in there. It's going to be the last long one, and then we're going to shorten them here. They're going to get short little stitches over here. But again, you want to make sure you're going the same direction the whole time. So that it looks nice and flat and shiny. Okay, this last one I did is a little too far from the previous one, so I'm going to wedge one right in there. Okay, so there's one apple. This light is killing me. I feel like, here we go, switching lights again. Okay. So there's our shiny little apple. And you're going to do the same thing with the other ones. Just fill them in one at a time. And so when we go down to do this one, I'm going to start at the bottom because I came down up here. You're just going to keep these really close together as you fill this in. Go, just like our pumpkin, go right up to those stitches on the previous apple. And just keep filling it in there. See, when you get regular tutorials, you get the edited version, and when you do the lives, you get the bloopers, the mistakes, the dogs barking, other people walking in the house. All right, so you continue with your apple like this. You can see with these that because we did our stitches all the way up to this apple, there will be this little line here just like there are over here, and that's nice because it kind of gives us that outline of the apple. Okay. I got like a shine of light and I wanted to stay in that spot. Okay, so with the apples, I'm gonna just show you with the green. So what I did here previously was I just came up, after I finished the apples, I took one strand of that same brown, and you just make one tiny straight stitch, whichever angle you want your stem to go. And that's how you're going to do your stem of your apple. And for the green, I originally did these just solid red, and if you like them solid red, that's fine. But as I said earlier, I am kind of a connoisseur of apples, and it bothered me that they were solid red because I'm like, well, you don't usually see solid red apples. So, so I decided to take the green and try to make them a little bit more realistic by giving them little lines. And so this is truly just random. Now I went the same direction as my satin stitch. So you wouldn't do lines going a different direction or anything like that, but you're going to take a single thread of green and you're just going to do a line, random places, wherever you want. You could do like a whole area of green if you wanted. It's really up to you because it's just accenting. And it's not even necessary, but that's what I wanted on mine. So I'll show you real quick. And this will be the last part that I'm going to record for today. So we've got the chain stitch, long and short, our satin stitch apples, a little straight stitch for the stem, and then these little straight stitches. So here's my green. I'm just coming up through and doing a little stitch. Now, if you pull it too hard, it's going to disappear in there. So I'm going to do another one next to it. And this one, I'm not going to pull as tightly. Okay? I'm just going to let it kind of sit on top there. And you're probably like, I can barely see that. Well, yes, but if you do other lines, Here's a longer one, and I'm gonna let it, don't pull it too tight so you can see it kind of sticking up there. And some of these you might need to make a little bit longer than you think because the ends kind of disappear. But I like it with the extra green added in. This is really just a personal preference, so if you don't want to do this on yours, then you can leave it out. Or if you really wanted, you could do your apple and most of this color. Alright, so now my first apple has a little bit of green. We might do one at the top here so it looks like it's going around the top. Okay. So each one's going to look a little bit different. Just make sure you choose which way you want to angle your stitches for each of these. And you can go ahead before next time and fill in the rest of your chain stitch, your long and short, and the apples, and then we'll move on to another part next time. And hopefully then I'll have sunlight so we can have a closer view. But essentially I think one of the next ones will probably be this section, and then we'll work on this one day with the beading, and then we'll go to this part. We'll save the trickier one for last. All right, thanks for joining me.